Center for Health shut down. To let you know, I ain't going crazy. Empty. We're living under a false crisis. This is not an epidemic. This is not a pandemic. There is no disease. I have been doing research on top of research on top of research.
Got to get some hospital beds available.
The closing down of America.
Definitely parking spots.
I have not found anything to justify closing down the world, closing down the churches.
Let me get out of here. I done seen enough.
Separation of church and state.
These lying motherfuckers.
The closing of gun stores, the right to bear arms.
Right about everything.
The freedom of choice, being forced to wear masks.
So I guess Kaiser's closed.
And a fake virus. It's a fake epidemic. So what do we go? Where do we go from here? America is locked down today, just like many days before today, with no evidence. They tell us that there are dead bodies, but there are no dead bodies. They tell us there are sick people. There are no sick people. The hospitals are empty. Police stations are empty, just like our malls and our grocery stores. They're telling us that we have to live under these new restrictions. Garcetti, passing rules, regulations, telling us what we can and what we can do. They closed down everything. Over 17 million Americans have lost their jobs, their income, their savings, the stock market, retirement, all because of a fake virus. It's time to tell the truth. Corona stands for 666. Like it or not, it's a supercomputer connected to a 5G network. And if anybody's getting sick, it's due to 5G radiation, cellular poisoning. You do a little research, you can find out. The world's fastest supercomputer is located in China. This event started in China. 5G, China. Okay, so everybody's scared to say China. I'm not. And I'm not scared to say that this is a false epidemic, a false pandemic. The homeless is missing. Crackheads is missing. Hookers is missing. I drive through LA, everybody's gone. Motels are empty. Like the police station, like the hospitals, the clinics. The same places you would go if you was really sick and it was really an epidemic. Ask yourself, if so many people are dying, where are the bodies? Where are the grieving families? Where are the sick? If the hospitals are empty, we were told that they were overwhelmed. We need a hospital bed, so we had the USS Mercy here. Here in Los Angeles. It's all a lie.
Well, you see what happens. I understand the question very well. It's a great question, but we can do two things at one time. I will say this. Our country's learned a lot. We've learned about social distancing. We've learned about the hands. We've learned about staying away, at least during the time that this is even a little bit around. This disease or whatever you want to call it, many different names. You can call it many different names for the virus while it's around. And we can start thinking about, as an example, parts of our country are very lightly affected, very small numbers. And, you look at a state, great governor, Pete Ricketts, in Nebraska. You look at the kind of numbers they have out there. They have one of the great hospitals there too, relative to what we're talking about. But you look at Nebraska, you look at Idaho, you look at Iowa, you look at I can name many countries that are handling it very, very well and that are not affected to the same extent, or frankly not even nearly to the extent of New York, which is really, I'm dealing with Governor Cuomo, and we're dealing very well together. We'll be sending that ship up, by the way, as you know. We have a ship going to Los Angeles. We'll also be, the ship is coming out of a very large repair. It's all ready to go. Very, very soon will be. And over the next 3 or 4 weeks, that'll be coming up to New York. We'll go to New York Harbor, and it'll be fully supplied. So they're working on that right now.
Is China and South Korea. So those are the two countries that we're learning from. Those were 8 to 10 week curves. Each state in each hotspot in the United States is going to be its own curve because the seeds came in at different times. So Washington State is on their curve. They're about 2 weeks ahead of New York. And so each of these have to be done in a very granular way to really understand where we are. And it's the charge that the president has given us is to use all of our data analytics and all of our data inputs to really define those issues about where the virus is, where is it going, and what predictions we can make about where we are in that bell-shaped curve. That's why this was important. That's why this recommendation to the American people was important, because we have been saying that there is a level of asymptomatic or mild spread, and that's why each person has to be responsible. Each person has to be responsible in the way that they decrease their interaction with others, the 6 feet. You're all very social distance, so thank you. But also assuming that everyone that you're interacting with could be positive. And that gets into the hand washing piece, and that gets into the other piece we talked about is surfaces. I think until we really figure out the respiratory transmission versus the surface transmission, and this hard surface transmission, not fabric, will be really critical, because that is a way the virus could spread on subways or metros, where people would be holding on to things that other people had recently held on to. So that's the real question.
I think they're okay with it, and I'm okay with it. But this could be a much bigger problem. This could create a much bigger problem than the problem that you start off with. Now, other nations are going to have to do what they're going to do, but they'll probably do something very similar. But in our case, much more so than anyone else, because of the magnitude of our economy, the tremendous size of what we built and what we have, and the jobs involved. You have almost 160 million jobs in this country now, the most ever, by far the most ever. The number of jobs, almost 160 million. So we can't turn that off and think it's going to be wonderful. There'll be tremendous repercussions. There will be a tremendous death from that. Death. You're talking about death. Probably more death from that than anything that we're talking about with respect to the virus.
Track from people who get very seriously ill to when they probably got infected versus when they were exposed. And so when you start backing out each of those pieces, when you start seeing hospitalized patients, you know that the virus has probably been there for 3 to 4 weeks, substantially circulating within the population. So that's what we're looking for. Now, a little low-grade fever.
Ask yourself, do you know anybody who got sick, or who is sick, or used to be sick and got better, or died from this coronavirus? Or are we just listening to our leaders? The same leaders that told us to keep our money in the stocks while they sold their stocks, to avoid losing their money. The same leaders that are
not being completely honest with us as they lie to us and they take away our rights, our constitutional rights. You tell me, how much are they going to take from us before you start asking questions, before you start researching 5G, before you start researching Corona, before you start researching China and our leaders? Wake up. Wake up, America. Wake up, the world. Everybody who's in quarantine right now, wake up. Why are we in quarantine? The government has no evidence to justify the moves that they have made over the past couple of weeks, removing all of our rights. And martial law has not been declared. So closing the gun stores, closing the churches, closing the businesses, costing us our jobs, our money, our savings, our retirement. This is crimes against humanity.
There will be a tremendous debt from that. Debt. So you're talking about debt. There will be a tremendous debt from that. Debt. So you're talking about debt.
Are we really living through this? Sometimes life can seem like a dream. It's harder than anything we ever seen. It's hard to make sense of the senseless, but we have to be persistent. Times are changing. Time to change with it. I don't understand. Yeah. Oh, world is changing. They tell us that we can't be together. They tell us that must stay apart. Is that what they say? Stay apart. Can't come together. We get close. Man. What's up, folks? I hope you understand. This life is changing, man. This whole pandemic, systemic. They say that you can't cross the line of scrimmage. False start. All sides. Tell me what we do for our side. Is it pride? Do or die? We realize what we lost, we ain't getting back. That's it. Man, listen, things are never gonna be the same. Pain and separation. Pain, emotion. Can virus only in the world? Man. As the world turns, you see souls burn.
A tremendous death.
When will we learn?
So you're talking about death.
Man, you'll see when it's your turn. But we can't hold it together if we can't stay together. It's hard to make it through the stormy weather. There's a storm coming, people running, people hiding. It's hard to describe when your eyes are closed. You're not seeing the whole truth. But tell me, what can the world do? Speed off. Like in the flash. Fast and furious for your ass. Man, it's just like DoorDash. But still, we will outlast this pandemic, epidemic. to ashes, dust to dust. As we face these times, we try to stay strong in the face of weakness. We try to stay together when we must be apart. There's only one way, and that's the way that the universe is set before you. You can't change the unchangeable. You can only control what you can control.
Talking about death.
Grocery store lately, you've noticed the bare shelves as Americans hunker down at home amid the coronavirus pandemic. Try to shop online and you're likely to come across the words out of stock or back ordered. From poultry to dried goods, Americans have been stocking up to prepare for an extended period of so-called social distancing. That has food makers like Kraft Heinz, Campbell Soup, General Mills, and Kellogg working overtime to meet demand.
Abroad, many people traveled here. And as we know, many people are being quarantined in California military bases. So we've really taken a huge hit.
Supervisor Janet is China and South Korea. So those are the two countries that we're learning from. Those were 8 to 10 week curves. Each state in each hotspot in the United States is going to be its own curve because the seeds came in at different times. So Washington State is on their curve. They're about 2 weeks ahead of New York. And so each of these have to be done in a very granular way to really understand where we are. And it's the charge that the president has given us is to use all of our data analytics and all of our data inputs to really define those issues about where the virus is, where is it going, and what predictions we can make about where we are in that bell-shaped curve. And infecting others because of the social distancing, washing your hands, doing everything that we talked about. So we talked about also how people make choices because of their jobs that they have to come in. You'll notice I was not here over the weekend. I think this is the part that we really need to take personal responsibility for. Saturday, I had a little low-grade fever.
Connected to the coronavirus crisis.
There will be a tremendous death from that. Death. You know, you're talking about death.